Okay, this line, by the way, Taco, have you heard this? Trump always chickens out. And, tariffs are on, tariffs are off. We're going to raise the tariffs up to 150%. Oh, no, we're going to bring it down to 85%. Oh, wait, we're going to put a pause on tariffs for a week or two, until we can negotiate something here. Oh, I've got people lined up. 150 nations are lined up, ready to do trade deals with us. A lot of that is just grandstanding. He's like a carnival barker doing this. What he's doing is trying to keep the volatility of the marketplace, the volatility of the media narrative kind of cooking all the time. But let's break this down here real clear. I've mentioned this before in my previous episodes. Trade deficits don't matter. Okay. And that is key to understand. Now, budget deficits matter. Trade deficits don't matter. Budget deficits, like this big, beautiful bill that's going to increase the national debt by $5 trillion. That's a problem. You're going to have huge deficit spending, $2-3 trillion a year in deficit spending. You're going to get $5 trillion of an increase in the debt. That's a problem. That takes money away from the private sector where it can be used a lot more productively. That's what endangers our bonds. And, our bonds are being downgraded by analysts because they're concerned that America isn't going to be good to back up the loans and the money that's out there in treasury bonds. So and then, by the way, if the national debt keeps going up and up, and right now it's $36 trillion. Remember, like Reagan, when he took office in 1980, the national debt was about $1 trillion. Okay. And then George H.W. Bush raised it about $1.5 trillion. Clinton, despite balancing the budget for 4 years and despite running a surplus for 4 years, he still raised the national debt about $1.6 trillion. Then Bush rolls in, he increased the national debt by $5.5 trillion. Then Obama rolls in, it was like $8 or $9 trillion under Obama's watch. Okay, then Trump #1, and Trump 45 came in and he jacked up the debt about $8 trillion. And then Biden rolls in and he's jacked up he's jacked up the deficit by about another $8 trillion. And by the way, we're still in Joe Biden's final fiscal year. And now Trump is rolling out this big, beautiful bill that's going to jack up the national debt, probably $5 trillion in just 2 years. So the national debt matters, but a trade deficit doesn't matter. The national deficit matters. The trade deficit does not matter. I mean, what is a trade deficit? Well, the way it's framed at the political level and in the media, it's basically like you look at America and Canada as an example, and which nation is buying more stuff from the other nation. It's just an aggregation of all the transactions that are done by private individuals and private companies. And then at the end, they add it all up and they find out that one company spent more than one country spent more than the other country. But let's be clear here. Nations do not trade with one another. People trade. Corporations trade. Trades at the individual level. Each transaction is balanced. Each transaction is fair trade. Why? Because in each transaction, the buyer and the seller have both mutually agreed to voluntarily make a swap, to make a trade. I'll give you money, you give me stuff in return. And so if every transaction is fair and balanced, if you add them all up, they're all fair and balanced. And if it turns out that one country, when you add it up, just kind of look at the bottom of the spreadsheet, this is just an aggregation. If one country happens to buy more from the other country than vice versa, so what? I mean, you have a trade deficit with your grocery store. You give them a lot of money every week, every month, and in return, you get produce, vegetables, protein. You get, all kinds of goods and products in grocery stores. We can make the list. You get all that in return. Meanwhile, your grocery store, how much do they buy from you? Whatever business you're in, whatever your career is, how much does your local grocery store buy from you? Probably none at all. Does that matter? No, of course it doesn't matter. Trade deficits don't matter. So when Trump is pushing this rhetoric of Canada is ripping us off and China is ripping us off, we're subsidizing these other countries because of the trade deficit. We're not subsidizing these other countries. We're trading with them. Just like you're not subsidizing your grocery store, you're trading with them. A subsidy would be if I just wrote a check and handed it off to my grocery store when they were in trouble financially and says, here, this will help you out a little bit. That would be a subsidy. But if I'm getting goods in return, that's trade, and trade is not a ripoff. I mean, with rare exception when there's fraud or things that are considered, but those are the exceptions to the rule. So why is Trump doing this? Do you think he cares? Not really. He doesn't care about this. If he doesn't care that what you're buying is getting more expensive, he doesn't really even care that Japan isn't buying enough Cadillacs to, big ass Cadillacs to drive through, crowded Tokyo. He doesn't care about that. What he does know, though, is that it's a great tool to create a scapegoat. In this case, the nation. China, Canada, Mexico, they're ripping us off. He creates a scapegoat. And you'll see leaders in empires and in nations throughout human history will always create a scapegoat, or often create a scapegoat, because that gets the base all fired up. And then suddenly there's a fight about the virtue or the evilness of that particular scapegoat. But these are fake scapegoats, at least on the basis of what he's claiming. Trade deficit, there's no problem there. Now, you can make an argument with China as far as IP, intellectual property theft. You can make an argument that China is a concern from a geopolitical rivalry perspective. I mean, there's a lot of criticism, rightfully, of China. But China is not ripping us off. And China should not be made a scapegoat for the fact that we trade with them. I mean, frankly, it's a great thing. I mean, think about how many people have risen out of poverty in Asia over the last 30 years. Over 1 billion people have risen out of abject poverty because of this dramatic change in the way, international trade is being done. The fact that we're trading more with them, we're getting more stuff, which makes our lives better. And meanwhile, those people in those nations, corporations in those nations, in China, in Vietnam, in India, elsewhere, their wealth is rising. And now they can invest and buy more in America. See, trade is win-win. But Trump's mentality is always to frame everything as win-lose. That's how he thinks. I win, you lose. Or I'm losing, you're winning, and that's a problem. I need to win and you can lose. Where trade is win-win. Now, while we're having this argument, while the media is talking about trade deficits, while Trump is out there scapegoating China, telling everybody they're ripping us off, meanwhile, Eric Trump and Don Jr. are out there cooking up deals, billion-dollar real estate deals. I mean, they were recently at a Bitcoin conference. And Trump's got his own meme coin that he's trying to cook up. So all of these things that his children are doing, and in other cases, it's Jared Kushner. He was doing a lot of those deals in the first term, Ivanka Trump's husband. They're the ones that are out there that are enriching the family using the Trump name and only have access to these kinds of deals because they're a Trump, because Trump is the leader of the biggest nation, most powerful nation on the planet. So again, it's like a magician. We're all arguing about, the Gulf of America or trade. They're ripping us off on trade or illegal immigration. But really, watch the other hand and watch what his family is doing. Okay, here's another great example.